Hi there. Good
All
morning.
right,
Good
we're live.
afternoon. We are live. We're going to talk about ending cyber risk. So thank you very much for joining us today. I've got a good presentation for everyone out there. We're going to wait just a couple of, maybe another 10, 15, 20 seconds. I see some people coming in right now. We'll get going here very soon. Hope everyone's having a great day. I'm based out in California, and Chris, who I'll introduce in a second, he's in Minnesota, so we've got half the country covered here. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I like to be punctual. We're on time. So thank you again for joining us today. We've got a good presentation for you, and we're going to talk about ending cyber risk. And this presentation is focused towards the credit union environment. And Chris spent some time here tying a lot of the controls and framework that the examiners use back to specific services that can help your credit union reduce and hopefully end your cyber risk. So I think this presentation is going to be pretty informative. We're going to keep it high level. Don't worry, we're not going to use acronyms and we're not going to get too deep, but this should be a fun time here. And Chris and I also, we decided we're going to make this like a fireside chat. So we're going to have input from both of us, which will be kind of fun. So quick introduction. I'll introduce myself. My name is Lee Bird. I am the president of Btech. As I mentioned, we're based in Southern California. We're in the LA area. And my business, Btech, provides IT services for credit unions. We currently work with almost 125 credit unions across the country. Everything we do has a focus on security and compliance. So again, working with the credit union environment, we definitely do everything we can to make sure that the right tools are in place. And as you'll hear us speak to quite a bit, make sure we're protecting that member information. So critical these days. So Chris, why don't you introduce yourself here?
Well, thanks, Lee. My name is Chris Kuriger. I'm an Arctic Wolf systems engineer, so I work with people inside and outside of Arctic Wolf to make sure that the technology we use is aligning properly to that goal of ending cyber risk. Here at Arctic Wolf for a little over a decade now, we've been moving people in that direction of eliminating the problem around cyber risk. It's a lofty goal, and it's not something easily done or just done overnight. But hopefully, as we get through some of this presentation, you'll understand how we're taking a different approach and helping people to be able to basically sleep better or actually take a vacation from time to time without worrying about having a breach or losing some data, having anything compromised like that.
Thank you, Chris. And one last thing I'll point out, Btech is an Arctic Wolf partner, so we resell their services for our credit union clients, and this is a true partnership. So again, there's so much value in Arctic Wolf services, and hopefully you'll understand that as we get through today's presentation. One last thing, there is going to be an opportunity at the end for some questions and answers, some Q&A. So the platform we're using here has an area there that you should see where you can type in your questions. If you have questions during the presentation, please go ahead and type them in there. We'll try to get to all of them at the end. We're hoping to keep this right at about an hour, so probably 45 minutes, 40 minutes for the presentation, and then hopefully some time at the end for some questions and answers. And of course, my email address is there. Chris's email address is there on that slide. Everybody's going to get a copy of these slides. If you have any questions, you can always email us after today's presentation. Okay, so let's start with this logo, which is the Ncua. Chris, thanks again for putting all these great slides together. But as I mentioned before, we wanted to tie back the Arctic Wolf services to the Ncua and FFIEC's guidelines as it relates to securing member information in your credit union environment. So specifically, almost all of this framework starts with what most of you out there probably know about, which is Ncua's Part 748. This requires that you have an information security program. And the second part there in blue, which I'll read, this is the best part of, and kind of will set the stage for our presentation today. This information security program is designed to ensure the security and confidentiality of member information, protect against any anticipated threats or hazards to the security or integrity of such information, and protect against unauthorized access. So that Part 748 was written, I think, probably almost 15 years ago, but it couldn't be more relevant than today. And I'm going to tie this back to something that, if you've seen some of my presentations this year, I talk about it all the time, which is ransomware. And again, ransomware isn't your only risk, but it's a good example of how this statement ties back to something like ransomware. 96% of ransomware comes from end users clicking on a link in an email. We do everything we can to protect the environment from ransomware, but the risk is so high. And ransomware used to be an annoyance. It was an inconvenience. Ransomware attacks were typically designed to lock systems. You would pay the ransom and get the unencryption key so that you could unencrypt your systems that had been locked. That was typically the way ransomware worked for a few years. This year we saw something new, which is called the double extortion. What they would do is infect your systems. They would lay dormant for up to 30 days. And in that time frame, they would pull out your information or your data. That double extortion, what they were after is your member information. So collecting a ransom that you would pay to have your systems unencrypted, that was sort of their business model for many years. Now there's so much value in reselling the member information on the dark web that double extortion has really been sort of the latest trend that we've seen. So again, we're going to tie a lot of this back to this framework, and so let's continue on here. Okay, I'm going to speak a little bit, and don't worry, Chris is going to get a chance to talk also. Thanks, Chris, for being so patient. We're going to kind of tie some of this back into the Ncua's ASET workbook, which stands for Automated Cybersecurity Evaluation Toolbox. You may or may not know about ASET. This basically, Ncua put a toolbox together that would help automate or make it easier to understand the FFIEC's Cybersecurity Assessment Tool, or CAT. And not to make this more confusing, and I promised I wouldn't use acronyms, but the other one that is now being used by the Ncua as well is the Intrex framework. The last piece to this is all of these frameworks or guidelines also tie back to Nist standards. So I think the value here is not necessarily feeling like when the information security officer or the examiner comes in to do an audit that they're going to go through all of these controls with you. But think of this as the best practice. Again, the framework that you should be paying attention to, regardless of the size of your credit union, to make sure that you are at least aware of all the different areas within the environment that you should be focused on. The ASET has 5 domains. Chris, do you want to provide some insight maybe into the purpose of these 5 domains, or how these 5 domains sort of work?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of different controls or different things that need to be at least looked at, if not tightly secured, to make sure that you're not going to have a breach, not going to have member information that does get compromised. And so to really categorize those and say, here are some of the major things that you need to do, we're looking at all of those requirements and putting them into the individual domains so that they all relate together. Domain 1, your cyber risk management and oversight, really all of that is tied together, being able to make sure that you understand what you're looking at in your network. Domain 2 with the threat intelligence and collaboration. That means you know what you're looking against, you know what you're potentially going to be affected by and have to guard against, and that you do have a system internally and potentially externally to work with and prevent those threats. Cybersecurity controls, Domain 3, talking about some of the things that you need to put in place so that things don't happen in the background when you're not looking, just making sure that your systems are best practice. Then Domain 4, your external dependency management. That's something that you have to understand. Anyone that you work with outside of the credit union, anywhere that you're connecting to could be a cause for risk, whether it's your users logging into their Yahoo email or if it's a third party that you actually officially work with as an organization. And then that last domain, Domain 5, your incident management and resilience, means not if, but when something happens these days. I think almost 60% of organizations last year experienced some sort of incident. When that happens, you have to have a plan that says, here's what we're going to do to make sure that we are resilient, make sure that we respond quickly. So with all of those put together, that's really a good playbook for cyber risk. Having the individual domains makes it easy to understand the concepts. And then as we dive into more of the actual controls, we can talk about how Arctic Wolf really matters.
Awesome. So, Chris, I love that relationship management one. This is, again, one of the things I say all the time, vendor due diligence. And I love the fact that it's right there. It's very clear. And I know we all know about vendor due diligence, but just a quick sidebar, what we've seen lately with some of these ransomware attacks are what are called supply chain attacks, where vendors and vendors are participating in these attacks. So again, these domains are important, and understanding them, again, is there's a lot of value there. Okay, so let's talk quickly about FFIEC. Again, the ASET was created as a toolbox to align with FFIEC's cybersecurity assessment tool, the CAT. And, again, the last thing I'll say is, whether you follow every single control within these or not, this is a good framework to at least sort of set some of your policies internally and your risk assessments, risk management, making sure that you at least have a really good understanding of how this all works. And I will say for the fifth time, this is important regardless of institution size. I hear a lot of the smaller credit unions say, well, we're under $1 billion, we're not going to focus on this. And it probably, again, what we're seeing is the examiners are auditing with the same controls now. They're under institutions under $1 billion, so everybody is going to have to pay attention to this. All right, Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about the security operations framework?
Yeah, so an operational framework, just like what we were looking at with ASET, is something that's necessary to make sure that you're hitting the right controls, that you're looking at the right areas. At Arctic Wolf, we're tied tightly to Nist. We work with a lot of the other frameworks, but as of a decade ago, Nist was and still is the standard for this type of framework. You need to be able to identify what you have and where your potential threats are. You need to be able to protect all of those things and ensure that you have the proper configurations, the proper safety tools. You have to detect when something does slip by, and that's that when, not if. But you also have to be able to respond quickly and recover so that if there is any potential for compromise, you close that window quickly, make sure that the compromise isn't there. Putting all of that together really is what you need for a security operation, or really to just have a security mature posture as an organization.
So, Chris, it really is all these pieces together is sort of that the key word here is security operations. So like a security operations center, it's basically you have to be able to identify, protect, detect, respond, and then recover. It's all of these pieces together that makes up that security operations framework.
And organizations have tools to address certain subsets of these or pieces of these. But 90% of the organizations I talk to will admit, okay, well, we're great here and here, but when it comes to the respond piece, we don't have a plan. Or, we don't really have a good identity on what all we've got out there. Thanks to COVID, we've got a lot more remote work from home, people out there in the field. They don't know if they have the laptop at a Starbucks that day or not sometimes. So being able to bring all of this together and hit all of the high points is what people are trying to do to move into that security operations window. And it's just a difficult goal to achieve, especially by yourself.
Yep, sure is. And again, it's, we see this in a lot of environments is the, I forget the analogy, but it's basically just the paralysis of logs and files and alerts, that if there isn't a good service or tool in place, eventually you just stop paying attention to it, right? I mean, if you're getting 1,000 emails or 100,000 email alerts a day, which ones are you going to pay attention to? So, okay, so your operational approach, how does that work?
So we feel that there are a few things that you've got to do to have a good operational approach. If you look at these first two shapes, those are really kind of just the table stakes or the requirements to even say you have a security operation at all. Broad visibility, meaning you have to look at all your systems. 10, 20 years ago, you could put a firewall in place. You can put an antivirus program in place and say, hey, we're doing our due diligence, we're covered. That's not the case anymore. You've got systems in the cloud. You've got those remote workers. You may have systems that are security as a service out partial cloud. You've got systems that are sitting on servers or virtualized inside your environment. All of these pieces need to be covered and need eyes on them. And you've got to do it 24/7. We found that the majority of attacks these days are happening either at night or on the holidays and weekends. Most attacks happen between 8 and 8 or 8 and 7 because they know that there's somebody sitting there watching your network, watching your information during the day. But very few organizations have a network administrator sitting there at 1 o'clock in the morning, especially on Christmas Day or on New Year's. And that's when these bad actors know that they have a better chance of getting access into your systems. Like the
Kaseya, Chris, like the Kaseya attack on Friday, July 2nd, right before the start of the holiday weekend.
Exactly. Everybody comes back in on Monday with a whole bunch of, oh no, but they don't have an operation necessarily to see what happens over the weekend. I've seen it time and time again. The majority of companies I've worked with who had ransomware found out Monday morning, or in the event of a holiday weekend, Tuesday morning. They came in and no one can use anything. Why can't we log into the systems? About an hour later, their IT provider is helping them in recovery mode. And you want to be able to stop that Friday at 7 p.m., not be starting from scratch on Monday.
Right.
We do want to take it a step further than just having the coverage, though. As far as your security operations, it's great to have somebody with eyes on glass, somebody watching what you're doing. But you need to also be able to understand strategically as an organization, what is our maturity? What can we do to be better? Where are the holes? So we give access to expertise with our concierge security team. We'll talk about them a little bit more later, but it's a team that we assign to our clients so that they can not only have the experts working for them in their network, but have them for consulting purposes as well. Reporting and everything else that you need to understand what the threats are to the organization, what the potential loss is, whether it's monetary or reputation loss, a mix of the two. So that access to expertise extends into those other two shapes. Strategic guidance, so regularly meeting to determine what we can do to take one more step towards ending cyber risk for the organization, and then the continuous improvement. When something happens, you want to respond, but you also want to make sure that that never happens. All of those together build Arctic Wolf's operational approach and how we feel that we can really help people to end cyber risk. With our platform, what we're looking to do is we're not trying to reinvent the wheel for what customers have done. We're trying to help people use what they've already put in place for their network with their existing technology stack. So we're not going to tell you, you've got to go buy this firewall, you have to buy this antivirus. If you're not using this network detection system, you've got to buy it. We're going to take all the technology that you've already put money into and time into and help you to leverage it better. The way that we're doing that is by taking all that data and centralizing it in our platform so that our engineers will be able to watch over you 24/7, enrich that data, and give you good analysis, good reporting on what's happening. When an investigation needs to happen, we and you will both have all the information at your fingertips that you need to make quick determinations, make the decisions that you need to in a moment when that type of attack does happen. Of course, helping you to do it the way that it needs to be done and feel confident about it, there's that concierge security team delivering you the unlimited level of service there for you to help you with that sleeping better at night, or help you with feeling okay to turn off your phone for a couple days on a vacation, and then delivering those services that you see at the top across the entire framework. So helping with detect and respond, helping with risk, operational risk, obviously helping with things in the cloud. And then lastly, security awareness. Lee tied this in pretty early on in our conversation. You had mentioned about people clicking that link being the majority of the problem. You can put all the right systems in place, but you're still going to have a user make a mistake. So the better you can train those users, the more that you can give them the tools they need to understand what an attack looks like, how to respond properly to these things. You can really trim down the likelihood of a successful attack.
Chris, quick question about that security team. So I saw a post on LinkedIn that there's a new Arctic Wolf office in San Antonio, but these are US-based employees, right?
They are. Everyone that you interact with as a part of an Arctic Wolf service is going to be a North American-based Arctic Wolf employee. So we don't have a follow the sun or an outsourced team. If you need to call in, God forbid that you do, but on Christmas Day at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're going to reach a North American-based Arctic Wolf employee in one of our security operations centers here in North America.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I've just, over the last year or so that we've been working together, is that the people are really one of the strengths of Arctic Wolf. And you aren't just selling, some software or some, like you said, firewall. And it's about the services, and it's awesome, the people that we've seen, that we've been able to work with at Arctic Wolf.
Yeah, and I mean, really, to hammer home on that, you said that the people are one of the best. I say that without our people, we wouldn't be able to deliver what we're doing for our customers. Really, the key to the operational approach we're doing, the cornerstone of everything, is really our team. And that team is broken down into two halves. You've got your concierge security team, and they'll be the people that you interact with most of the time. During normal business hours, if there's an issue or if you need a report, if you have questions, or if there's something that needs to be taken care of to make sure that you don't have a security hole, you're going to be communicating with them on an unlimited basis. So without having to worry about, if I call them today about this little thing, will they be available next week if we have something big? You don't have any limit on the amount of contact, whether that's through email, phone, SMS, however you want to communicate with your team, they're going to be there to communicate with you. But if you look at what Gartner says, they say you need at least 8 people to run a successful security operations center inside of a business. Well, we have over 350 engineers working on the back end in our triage team doing the tactical work. These are the people who are going to help find and detect any potential indicators of compromise inside of the network. They're going to back up the concierge security team with all the deep level forensics, all the analysis that they need. And they're going to be able to give you the power of the pack, which is what we call it here at Arctic Wolf, backed by that pack, being able to understand that if there is a security incident in your network, you could have 20 to 25 Arctic Wolf engineers looking at your data and working on your incident at any given time. They're flexible and they're very quick. They enable us to give you that 30-minute SLA on response and detection, which is one of the statistics that you don't see many other companies in the sector being able to tout. Within 30 minutes, we'll let you know if something's going on. Lastly, over there on the right, you do see a list of certifications. I won't run through all the acronyms. You can see that there's a number of them there. We do have our own internal training process. So all new hires are certified and trained in our internal processes within 90 days, and then are required to recertify every year. It's a pretty rigorous training process. They get a bomber jacket and they can earn patches. It's a pretty cool program internally. So that team is always really on their toes and knows everything about the newest security landscape.
Awesome. All right, quick update for everyone. Again, a reminder, if you have questions, please shoot them into the Q&A box. And just to give everyone sort of some framework on where we're at with the presentation, we're more than halfway done. I think we've got about 5 or 6 more slides. Excuse me, I had a little cough there. What we're going to do now is we're going to tie those ASET domains back to the three key service areas that Arctic Wolf does. So, Chris, maybe you could speak to the two that are highlighted here, what we're looking at.
Yeah, so you can see that we're talking about threat monitoring, actually looking over what's going on inside the network. And then on the domain 5, we're also talking about being able to respond to that. When Arctic Wolf was founded, we were coming to the market with the ability to do next level detection and response. That's what companies needed, and that's why companies were trying to do security operations centers inside of their own organization, hire the employees, bring in the tools, and they were finding that it was extremely difficult. It takes a long time to get set up. You're not sure if it's running right because it's almost everybody's first foray into that. With the monitoring, being able to look at what's going on inside the network, you actually get to see if there's a problem. But with just that monitoring, you're still left high and dry when it comes to trying to formulate a response when there's an issue. So Arctic Wolf's managed detection and response gives you access to that concierge team and triage team. They give you access to all of that data being centralized in the Arctic Wolf platform. But what that's giving you the ability to do is have constant threat hunting, constant watch guard on your organization to get that detection level to a high detection level where you're going to have those quick detections. We talked earlier about how sometimes organizations will be compromised for months or even half to 3/4 of a year and not know about it because those bad actors are trying to collect member data, moving around quietly and not trying to infect you with ransomware. We're going to be able to detect that as it's happening in the evenings or on the weekends and let you know before something happens, before the ransomware payload gets lost and before you end up potentially in the news. But the second part of it is really being able to respond. So response needs a lot of actual additional forensics, a lot of work to make sure that not only have you responded to the threat you saw, but that there's nothing lingering and there's nothing else that you need to do. You'll have the full guidance from your Arctic Wolf concierge security team to do that. And then, of course, recovery. So determining where were the causes, what happened with this, do we need to educate users further? Is one of our systems not performing the way that it should, or is this a new hack, something that's a 0-day? We'll be able to walk you through every piece of that with that broad visibility and giving you the full response and the actual ability to get the forensic reporting. So if you have to leverage a third-party organization for whether it's an audit or just coming in response to something that you feel may have been an incident, you're going to have the dedicated security expertise, and you're not going to spend your time, spend a week not being able to really do work in the network or do the normal day-to-day jobs that the IT team is supposed to be doing because they're working with the auditors. You have a security team dedicated to you to work with those auditors. If you look down at the bottom, there are the detect, respond, and recover pillars. That's out of the Nist framework that we talked about at the first place. Being able to fulfill those gets you a huge step forward in your security maturity. And that's what most people really have started looking for.
Okay, Chris, so just to recap, what we really wanted to do today was tie everything back to those ASET domains. So the Arctic Wolf managed detection and response services, those tie back to domain 2, which is threat intelligence and collaboration, and domain 5, which is cyber incident management and resilience. So those two are covered by the MDR services from Arctic Wolf.
Absolutely. Most of the controls inside of each of those domains will be completely covered. There are a few things that relate to things like on-site locking of closets and things of that nature, but your team is there to help you walk through those policies. So we're not going to write security policy for you, but we'll help you understand what those policies need to look like and where you can get that posture so that when you're looking at the ASET framework, you can say, hey, we're covered here and here. These are the things that we need to do to improve over the next year to make sure we're covered better. I wish I could say you get Arctic Wolf's detection and response service and security worries are a thing of the past immediately. Unfortunately, we both know that's not the case. It's a process, but you'll be well on your way and be covering the majority of those controls within just 30 days with Arctic Wolf's onboarding and white glove approach to security.
Awesome. Okay, so here we go. We're going to start tying in the second of the three services. So I'll let you know the name of the second service is called Managed Risk, but it focuses on the first three domains. So again, the first three domains are cyber risk management and oversight. The second is threat intelligence and collaboration. And the third is cybersecurity controls. So, Chris, any input on these three domains before we review the managed risk services?
Absolutely. These are a little bit more vague when you look at the controls themselves, because it says you've got to have a good risk management program in place, but they're not going to define exactly what your good risk management program looks like. And that's where people kind of stumble when it comes to this. Trying to get that program, which covers all three of those domains, starting with just identifying and understanding all your potential risks, but then looking into obtaining the threat intelligence or making sure you've put the proper preventatives in place can be a bit of work, and it generally is a number of tools. So someone will get a scanner, someone will get a management program. They piece these things together, and it's been something that IT teams have spent a lot of time trying to create or reinvent. With Arctic Wolf, we actually do have a full program that covers all of this.
And again, a lot of this focuses on vulnerabilities. So I'm going to just sort of speak to vulnerabilities real quick. So vulnerabilities are known vulnerabilities within the environment. So often what this is a manufacturer, whether it's hardware or software, identifies something within their firmware, within their software that could be exploited. And I think, Chris, what we've seen is now for a lot of our clients, we're using tools to look for indicators of compromise. And it's basically those vulnerabilities that were not fixed or remediated or even identified within a client environment that got exploited. So, I mean, it could be something as simple as a firmware update on an HP ILO card, or it could be, like we've seen, VMware has had 3 critical vulnerabilities on vCenter so far this year, and these are all zero-day vulnerabilities. So that's kind of what we're speaking to here, right, as it relates to those, identifying those vulnerabilities within the environment.
A lot of people probably will look at vulnerabilities and think, we're going to have a certain subset. Everybody's got a few. When in truth, most people have quite a lot. You can't remediate everything at once. And the hardest thing to do is to be able to figure out what needs to be remediated today, what can we do on patch weekend this month, and what do we not really have to do right now because it's not actually a risk. When you look at risk, it's the likelihood of an incident multiplied by the impact of said incident. And so if there's a very easy way for me to log into your website on the wrong port and access it through a device that I shouldn't be accessing through, but all I can do is look at your public listings for contact information at the organization, then is that really a threat to the credit union? Not really. It's not a risk. It is a vulnerability, but that one could probably go at the bottom of your priorities list. What you're getting with Arctic Wolf technology as far as managed risk is the ability to identify all of those vulnerabilities, internal, external, and cloud. So that means that anything on the network, anything as far as the software that you're running, what's loaded on your users' workstations or your servers, externally looking at, are there holes in your firewall, or is there a way for me to leverage your web server in a way that it wasn't intended to be? Can I cause it to dump some member information to a form for me? Things like that, as well as looking at cloud vulnerabilities. So if you have an issue with Office 365 configuration, or if you're leveraging something like AWS S2 or leveraging AWS VMs in the cloud, the configurations on those are super important. We've seen a lot of really big breaches come from poorly done cloud configurations. And it's not that IT administrators don't do their best working with these new cloud programs. It's that they're new, they're complex, and it's hard to find somebody with experience in actual cloud security or cloud threat management. We're not doing anybody any favors at Arctic Wolf, because if we do find them, we're hiring them pretty much immediately. But we're definitely pulling the talent pool together for a good place for people to access it. You get those vulnerability scans as well as the benchmarking that you see on this hexagon shape, but also account takeover monitoring. So when someone's credentials or when someone's information is passed out there on the dark web, we can alert you of that as well. The benefit that you really get over the top of everything is the fact that you have the concierge security team to help you understand the results of all these scans, because it's going to be big. It's going to be a lot of different pieces. And I'm sure that you guys have been through having a scan done or having an evaluation done, and you've got a list with maybe 60 pages. You got a few things highlighted that could be a big vulnerability, but when it comes down to it, what do you do first? What's more expensive? What's reasonable and what's not? That concierge team will be your security team in the pocket to give you all of that information and help you formulate the plan or the playbook to remediate these vulnerabilities as quickly as possible. Looking down on the left there, we do look at the identify and protect pillars of Nist, as well as the recover. So being able to identify all of the risks, identify what assets you have in the organization, and identify whether or not it's properly protected is a huge piece. But having this information helps you to recover if there is a potential incident or an indicator of compromise in the network as well. If you look down at the bottom right, 80% of your top threats can be prevented by just meeting basic controls. And so making sure that you meet those controls on a daily or at least weekly basis is hugely important to a security operations center or a security operations profile.
Chris, I'm going to jump in real quick. So you spoke about cloud, and I did a webinar about a month ago. Microsoft has really upped, not just to pick on them as a cloud provider, but they're one of the leaders, obviously, in the space. They've really started being more open and transparent about the risks of cloud. And again, like you said, when everybody started adopting a cloud strategy 5, 6, 7 years ago, we really weren't thinking security. And so there's a lot of systems that have been put in place and have been there for a while, but the compromised credentials, business email compromise, all these things are happening to cloud environments. And the fact that you're not just looking at on-prem solutions or services, but also cloud, I think is obviously there's so many people have started leveraging cloud, so you have to focus on that as well.
Well, and if you're not now, Microsoft and others are certainly twisting your arm. Right. I know I had the conversations years back where people would say, "Oh, we're adopting the cloud because we put it in the cloud and so it's secure." That's not exactly the case. The cloud is somebody else's computer. But if you want to trust Microsoft with all your security protocols, there's putting all your eggs in one basket for sure. But we've evolved to the point where you kind of have to use the cloud at some point or another. A lot of people still have on-premise email servers, but they're less and less support for those things. They're making them harder and harder to maintain. That push to the cloud is something that few organizations are avoiding completely. And even if they are, they won't for long. So having your cloud environment or having the availability of the expertise to understand what can we do to protect our cloud if we have to put it here is invaluable these days.
Excellent. Okay, so we're getting closer. So now we're on the third of the three services. This one is managed security awareness. So I mentioned it at the top. I probably should have saved it to now. I love the saying because this fact, every time I Google it, it's still valid. 96% of ransomware comes from clicking on a link in an email. And I've shared with all of our clients and people, I say it all the time. If you said, Lee, we've got $1 million a month, what can we do to secure our environment? Definitely within the top 3 things you can do would be training your staff. And I call it creating a culture of awareness. It has to become culture, whether you have 10 employees in your credit union or 1,010. It's the same type of culture. You have to really do this through a process, through tools. And wouldn't you know it, it's there in domain 1. So training and culture. And it's not culture of like the IT staff. This goes across to everyone, C-level to teller line to back office. It doesn't matter. Everybody is a team player. everybody has that ability to cause that risk or that incident for the credit union. So again, this is, again, Chris did a great job tying these all back to this framework, but Chris, I'll let you speak to the last service here, the managed security awareness, and then we'll, I see a couple of questions in here. We'll answer some questions.
And you hit it right on the head when you said culture. Culture is the harder thing to do. A lot of companies have been assigning security training. But I think we've all been in the boat where you get hired at a new organization, or you have the IT administration say, oh, we're rolling out this new program. You sit down once a year, you take 2 to 6 hours of training, you're rolling your eyes and pausing to go get another cup of coffee. Honestly, how much do we retain from that? A guy named Ebbinghaus says that within a month, we've forgotten 80% of it. So at Arctic Wolf, we're trying to make it friction-free, a little bit more palatable to the users, and kind of give that culture a little bit of a boost so people talk amongst themselves, understand what their responsibility is as an employee of the organization, how all of us kind of have a role to play in security and not just IT, and also kind of breaking down those walls security-wise between IT and some of the employees. People have historically been afraid to say, oh, I clicked on this, am I going to get fired for it? We're trying to make people a lot more comfortable with, we know users make mistakes. Trust me, the IT people have dealt with all kinds of craziness. You're not going to come to them with something that is brand new for them, most likely. What we want to do is make this easy. So we're putting out automated phishing simulations, giving you the stats that you need, giving you the monitoring that you'll need to understand all of the numbers. But we're also doing the sessions that we do. They're called micro-learning because it's less than 3 minutes every other week. And you think, how much content can you put into 3 minutes? But I'll tell you, it's even changed for me since I've been doing them as a member of Arctic Wolf. You know, our entire company does these sessions, and we have these phishing simulations sent to us. For instance, the likelihood of me leaving my laptop laying on my passenger seat while I run into the gas station has gone down at least 80% because it's top of mind. And that's the whole point, is to keep some of these security protocols, security pieces of information right top of mind so that the users will at least be a little bit more hesitant instead of saying, okay, I'm not sure about it, I'm just going to X out and I won't tell anybody. They're going to say, I understand what's going on. Let me not click this, or let me forward this email to IT. It's all about keeping people really talking, keeping them part of the program, and increasing that culture as an organization to where people understand cybersecurity is something that, you know, if we leave the wrong door unlocked, or if somebody leaves the wrong computer open with no password to log in, none of us have a job come Monday because the bad actors have gotten in and gotten a hold of all the information. So we try to make Chris, it fun and easy.
Yeah, and you know, the one that you mentioned earlier, also those simulated phishing attacks. It's a quick funny story is I have a client that you get reports. They're like a report card. It tells you, I call them clickers, who the people are that are clicking on the links. And we had a client, and of course it was the CEO. And she had clicked on a link, and she called me and said, I need you to remove that from the report. And I said, I can't. I mean, it's there. And she said, well, I opened it for someone else, and we weren't sure, so we clicked on it, but it really was somebody else's email. And it was so funny, you know, that, again, what had happened there in that environment was there was a culture where they really took this seriously. And, you know, this is a 50-employee credit union, and I love it when you can see this mindset now where the CEO is actually engaged. And I just wanted to share that story. And the other one that's funny is you talked about somebody clicking on a link or clicking on an email. Do you remember the old Southwest Airlines commercial, You Want to Get Away, where the guy forwards the virus to everybody's computer and they all start beeping? I still think of that. So, but sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to share that story because I love that. It's that culture. It's getting everybody on board, including the CEO. You know, when you look at a report card, you know who your clickers are. It helps, especially the IS or IT department, know where they have to focus their energies on the staff.
And you'd be surprised, when we start this program for new organizations, some of them will have up to an 80 or 85% click rate on that first phishing email that goes out. But instead of, alarm bells going off, you get a naughty check mark on your report card. Your team is going to know who clicked those links, but we're going to give you a remediation session that says, okay, we see you clicked a link, you made a mistake. Here are the things that you should have seen about this email. This is what to look out for next. And just click finished once you've clicked all of these to identify them. When users complete those remediation sessions, we see that phishing click rate drop drastically. Unfortunately, not immediately to zero, but a lot closer to single digits as opposed to the majority of an organization in just a couple of weeks because of that type of remediation session and just the approach of being a little bit more soft-handed. It's a lot of a carrot instead of stick approach.
Right. Yeah, it's good. All right. I know we've got one more slide here, Chris, and then we'll jump into the questions. We've got, I think, 3 questions already. So I'll let you speak to the logical architecture. What are we looking at?
So what you can see here is really what the security architecture of an organization would look like. If you look up at the top right, that's your basic normal office. So looking at the data that's coming in and out of a physical location, the physical things that actually can forward security logs. But moving clockwise down there, you've got the actual end users who are no longer in the office. So we're grabbing that telemetry as well. Further down towards the bottom there, you've got all kinds of good things that are in the cloud, like authentication systems, special gateways, things that are kind of either cloud managed or hybrid between on-site and cloud, that we're going to gather that from both on-site and in the cloud. And then over here on the left, you've actually got all of the hardcore cloud things. So the account takeover monitoring that's coming from the dark web, our APIs that tie into things like Microsoft Azure, Office 365, and then agents that we can also put in the cloud, sensors and detection sources for there as well. All of that pulls together, and your concierge team is looking at it for you so that you can see everything centralized, all of it in one place. I talk to IT administrators all the time who identify with the term alert fatigue. We get 1,001 alerts over the weekend. They're going to look at the top 10 critical alerts and probably dismiss all of the low priority, give a little bit of time to each of the medium priority, and they've got work to do. By 9 o'clock on Monday, somebody's probably already got an issue or there's a project that needs work to be done on it. With Arctic Wolf, we'll be able to dive in deep to each one of those and make sure that it's getting all the attention that it needs for proper security.
Awesome. All right. So, Chris, can I throw a couple questions your way?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. So this was fun. I'm glad we kind of had a chance for credit unions to tie this back to those domains. So again, Chris did most of the heavy lifting here in going through those domains. I appreciate your time spent on this, Chris, but I think it was super informative because, one of the things that I think is sort of a challenge is, there's so many security tools or services out there, and really it gets sort of foggy sometimes. Like, what are they trying to do with this? And a lot of acronyms and names. But again, just to sort of recap, Arctic Wolf has 3 key services or product lines. There's the managed detect and response. There's the managed risk, which is the vulnerability, and then the managed security awareness, which is that training. So one of the questions that came up is, will Arctic Wolf help remediate issues found from something related to the ASET workbook? Like, how does that work? Would it be consulting, or what does that look like?
So we actually work right alongside our clients as far as remediation. You've seen things like Kaseya or SolarWinds that are supply chain breaches, and Arctic Wolf has always been adamant that we don't want to be part of your attack surface. We're not going to reach in and take control over all of your tools. We're not going to be that big global or national provider who owns everything inside of your account. What we'll do is, if there's any issue, we will spend as much time as necessary. Your concierge security team will run through a screen share session to be able to walk through whether it's firewall rules and configurations, or stepping through account data, helping work with things like a data management system to go through every piece of the forensic investigation that needs to be looked at, as well as making sure that any open holes are remediated, any threats are completely nullified. And we're going to do that not just until Arctic Wolf is satisfied, but until the customer, until everyone involved is satisfied. I kind of like to make the joke that if the person had the proper administrative access, we could walk through it with the receptionist and they would be able to fix the incident, because we would tell you specifically, here's where to click to take care of this. So if your IT team is not a cloud security expert, or maybe they're not experts at Cisco firewalls, we'll be able to walk them through the different pieces there. Of course, if the receptionist has administrative access to your cloud or your firewall, that's a security risk in itself. So we'd have to remediate that for you as well. But they're going to be there with you 100%. A lot of people, you hear about IR retainers or limit on IR for incident response. We have completely unlimited access for that.
That kind of ties into the next question, which was how often does Arctic Wolf meet with us? So I guess that's sort of an open question, but there really is no limit. I mean, the whole idea is there's a regular cadence, right? So the goal is to align the client with that name is called the concierge security team. So those are the regular people that you have the relationship with. So typically, how often is that done, Chris?
So we have at least quarterly meetings with our clients to sit down and go over all of the reports, all of the findings that were not immediate indicators of compromise. We talk about that alert fatigue. We're not going to throw everything at you that we ever see. So there are improvements that you'll expect to be making quarter over quarter, and we're going to get that in front of you. We'll sit down with you and the auditors, or sit down on an internal meeting or on a board meeting if need be, to explain some of these reports. But that's normally done quarterly. For smaller things or more acute needs, we're willing to meet with you anytime. So on a Tuesday, you find out you've got an examiner coming in and looking at something on a Thursday, let your concierge security team know. They'll carve some time out and make sure to be right there ready for you when that meeting goes on, so that they can sit down and review anything necessary. We want to do it at least quarterly, because having your finger on the pulse of security is so important. But we're, like you said, unlimited there. Depending on what you need and when you want it, we're going to make sure that you have all the information you need between those quarterly, more official meetings.
And you mentioned reports. So I know, Chris, you and I have done this for another credit union, but there are reports that are already formatted for credit union environment. I mean, speaking directly back to these guidelines. So, and I also, the word I use a lot is sort of being an advocate for the credit union in that audit. So there's the ability of running all sorts of different reports. And now, does the credit union client, can they run these on their own, or do they have to place a service ticket or something to have Arctic Wolf run these for them?
So there are a few reports that you can just grab from inside the portal. The more generic reports are there, easy to grab. But we like to customize those for you. So in the event that you do have need for a report, obviously if it's going to be something extremely customized, something that we don't normally do, give them a little bit of time to put it together. But if you need a report for a meeting that's in 15 minutes, you can get a phone call placed out or shoot a text message or email over. We have a 5-minute response time when you reach out to us for anything that is an emergency or an issue that you see. So we'll be able to jump back to you and get you reports really quickly. That's the idea of having the concierge team there for you. Imagine that they're your guys and girls in your security operations center in your building. So if you're going to a meeting and you wanted to stop by and grab a copy of X report, it's the same way. It's just that they're virtual and not right there beside you.
Awesome. Okay, well, that looks like all of our Q&A, and we're kind of right on time. We did this pretty well, Chris. Good thing we had about 40 hours of practice this week, right?
Absolutely. Practice makes perfect. Even when it comes to security.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to share? Did we cover everything? I think we did.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we covered everything that we could to kind of align here with what you're looking at as a credit union when you're looking at some of the controls that are put in place, some of the expectations. that are just growing on organizations. And Lee, you could speak to that. I'm sure you've spoken to a number of people this year, and will continue to next year, who say, oh, we've got new requirements. It's come back. Everything from cybersecurity insurance to third-party vendors to official examiners are asking for your security posture, what kind of security operation you have. And we've got a firewall is less and less becoming an okay answer. So just think of Arctic Wolf as your partners here for security. And of course, we have a great relationship with Btech. So if you need help putting together some of the new pieces of your security posture, if you're trying to move to the cloud and you need some engineers to really put hands on and help you configure, Btech and Arctic Wolf work wonderfully alongside one another. So we've got you covered from the local level and from the larger level of having that full 24/7 expertise on your network.
Yep, it's been a great partnership so far.
To talk with you.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so everybody, thank you very much for your time, and everybody's going to get a copy of this. Be sure to share the recording with your C-level, with management, so that when you're telling them why it's so important to have a cyber strategy, they understand what you're speaking to. So we're going to go ahead and end this now. So thank you again, everyone, for your attendance today. And Chris, I'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Yeah, see you soon. Thanks, Lee.
All right, take care.